Hello, everyone. My name is Tooways Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. So, for those of you who are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a rating for the podcast. Now, if you're joining us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Adila Moolla Aboo, a chartered accountant who's the Director of Accounting and Compliance at the Western Cape Government. She's also a coach and a former assistant manager at the Auditor General. Adila, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Uwais. I'm very excited to be here.
Let's jump straight into your story. Tell us, who are you, where do you come from, and even outside of work, who is Adila Aboo? Give us the backstory.
Okay, so I'm Adila Moolla originally, and I've kept my surname with my CA credentials because I always say my dad is who got me where I am, and I'll never change it, even though legally my surname is Aboo. I'm originally from a small town called Stanger. It's now known as Kwadukuza. I moved to Cape Town when I was 13 and did my high school here. And then I studied at UCT, just to give you some background. I did my undergrad at UCT, and then I obviously met my husband, Nabil Aboo, and I wanted to get married. And because I wanted to get married, I had to do my CTA part time, and I was married. So I think from there, what's good for the listeners as well and the youngsters out there, it's not impossible. For myself, I always give trainees advice, and I say to them, you have to be committed. It's 8 to 10 months of your life during CTA, whether you do it full time or part time like myself, it can be done. I studied every day in the mornings for an hour, and I studied every evening for 3 hours. I actually did lectures at Varsity College where I would attend, but if you want to use the time to study, that's also great. And then I did my articles at a small firm called Nolan's Inc. I really enjoyed it. It's much bigger now, but at the time when I did it, it was a small firm. And I got exposure to everything, every type of company, every type of entity, trusts, CCs, which don't, you can't have them anymore. You can't create one anymore. And I then moved on, and I worked consistently. Like I said, my only break was a Friday evening. So I still studied on a Friday morning. My husband was studying with me, which kind of gave the support for each other and made it easier. But then what I did was an opportunity came up for at the Auditor General. And I was at the Auditor General as an assistant manager, and I was there for 3 years. I had my daughter and I had my son. I was pregnant with my son, and I thought, let me stay at home. And I did it for a year, and I realized I am not one of those people that can stay at home and be a stay at home mother. I'm going to go mad. And that's also okay. That's fine. It's okay to want to have some interest in yourself and your career, and also balance that out with being a parent. So I saw this opportunity to become a training officer at Western Cape Provincial Treasury, and they had conceptualized the Chartered Accountants Academy, and I was employed to execute and give life to this conceptual framework that was put together. And so we started our first intake of trainees, and I did that for 5 to 6 years, and now I'm the director of Provincial Government Accounting and Compliance. So yes, definitely different ways to skin a cat, like you said, always. I also, in the time as a trainee training officer, I studied to become a performance coach because I'm very passionate about people development. So that's also what I do in my personal capacity, other than my full-time job. And on the personal side, to share with you, I'm a mother of 4. I have twin boys who are 2 years old and drive me absolutely insane. So for the parents out there, don't worry, I understand the pain that you're going through. So that's me in a very longish, short nutshell.
And
So you're welcome
other
to
than
ask away.
the 4 kids, what do we do outside of work on the weekends? Who are we?
So, my daughter's 11, my son is 9, and then I've got the twins that are 2. So, for me, I think a lot of people ask and think about what is balance? What does that mean? And I always say to people, it's not about the quantity of time, because trust me, my kids don't want me to give them attention for an hour. They really don't. And I think you will notice that the new generation's attention span is shorter. It's the reality of what we live in, the environment that we live in. So it's quality. So on the weekends for us, it might be going to the park. It might be going for a walk at Sea Point. It's not anything long. I haven't even considered, attempted, even dreamed of taking them all, even at home, putting on a movie for the twins, because it would never work. My elder two, I could take them to the movies and it was fun, and they enjoyed their first movie after being 2 years old. These two, the COVID babies are a different breed. So no,
Definitely,
that's the week.
definitely. So, I mean, as you mentioned, you've now had a long career in the public sector space, and I get many professionals contacting me, um, thinking that there's not a lot of opportunities in the public sector. Public sector, sorry. Is that sentiment true?
So it's not about, I don't think, firstly, no, it's not true. You need to have, the first thing I want to say is you must have the passion. If you want to so for example, if you're a young individual coming into the workplace and you want to make a difference and it's about the value and the impact that you make on an individual, then the public sector is for you. But if you are somebody that wants to make a lot of money and you want to grow financially, which is fine, that's okay, and your focus is profit driven, then I would say, look, either you work in public sector but also do other work, other remunerative work, or rather look at where is your actual passion. So for me, what I've noticed is the opportunities are definitely there. Like I said, we've got a training program for chartered accountants that can do their articles. You apply, you go through an interview process just like any firm, and then you are given the opportunity to do your articles focused purely in public sector. I have a lot of my trainees that have gone through the program that are employed in public sector. They were given permanent employment post the experience, and they did follow a recruitment process like any other organization. I think always what's important to understand, we are in a fiscal constrained environment at the moment, and this is whether you're public or you're private. And the main thing that distinguishes you and that will give you that opportunity and that foot in the door is the hunger and the enthusiasm that you show to want to learn and be exposed. For myself, speaking from my own experience, if I limited myself to just being a training officer and only focused on that part of what I was expected to do, I wouldn't have been given the opportunity to now be a director in my role, because I was always hungry to be exposed to more. And I was fortunate enough to be working with individuals that saw that. And they weren't kind of like stay in your box that you've been hired for. They exposed me and capitalized on my talents and allowed my talents to grow. And if you do that and you shift your mindset from being, just limiting, this is what I'm paid to do, I'm not doing more than that. If you shift your mindset, then doors open. I mean, we're having this conversation today, and that's just simply because I exposed myself to something more that got your attention. And that's why we're here.
Very, very true. Talk to us a little bit about that role switch from moving from the Auditor General to Provincial Treasury. In my mind, it's similar to moving from like normal audit to commerce. Did you have that same experience?
Yes. So from the Auditor General, I felt, look, as at the level that I was, I felt that I had achieved a lot in terms of what I wanted to achieve. And like I said, I had reached a point where I thought, maybe I want to be a stay-at-home mother. And I tried it. I allowed myself the opportunity to try. And I did consulting on the side, just very part-time short consulting. And what happened was, when I shifted, I realized I wanted to make an impact. Did I want to go back into auditing? No, I did not want to go back into auditing, but I did want to stay within public sector. So auditing, at the Auditor General, you kind of have the assurance view on what's happening, and you have that accountability leg that you hold public sector departments and entities and municipalities accountable for. But when I decided to focus and look into the actual public sector, into departments, or look for vacancies there, I wanted to be at the ground basically, and I wanted to have an impact. And it just so happened, Provincial Treasury, the role was there, and whatever's meant to happen comes your way. It will never miss you, and that's exactly what happened for me.
And now the question that confuses me quite a bit is, I mean, you're a provincial government director. How do the titles work in government? Because it always confuses me. Then you get a deputy director and a director
Yes.
and a director general and a DDG, and I don't know what is. Help the audience clear that up.
It confused me too. Okay, so let me start with Provincial Treasury. We have a head of department, and that same individual is also the head of Treasury, right? So below her, she's a female, which is great. We have a woman of color in our head as our head of Treasury, which is great, and we're so proud of it. And then part of that is, underneath her, she's got two deputies that report to her, and those are the deputy director generals that you're referring to. One is asset and governance and asset management, and the other one is fiscal, focus on the fiscal side. Then underneath that, you have our chief directors that report to the DDGs, the deputy director generals. And then you have a director like myself, which is equivalent to a senior manager, as you would have in an organization, in a private organization. And then your deputy directors is your same level as a manager. So that's how it works.
Okay, that makes that makes more sense.
Yes.
For the for the audience, we'll be responding to questions towards the end. So if you have questions, please add them to the comment section now so that we don't miss them. No, I noticed, like, I don't see many or I haven't seen any coaches who work in the public sector space. So how did coaching tie into your role, and why did you decide to become a coach?
So what I noticed for myself, right? I could see things strategically in the organization, and it would be like, when you see something and you know what the problem is, or the problem statement, and you kind of know how, you might not have the answers to the thing, but the expert has the answers, and you can guide them to unlock those answers. You definitely know you got that skill. And I happened to be talking to somebody, and he said to me, I was at a psycho event, and I was networking, and I was chatting to people on the table. And this gentleman said to me, you need to consider coaching. And I said, what is coaching? And he said, where you involve others and you get the best out of their thinking. And your skill is to just guide them, and kind of, if you have to be a sounding board, you be the sounding board. If you have to talk them through a problem and help them unlock their potential, then that's what you do. And I researched it so much, and then Provincial Treasury was kind enough to pay for it for me to study coaching, and I did it with USB Ed, which is Stellenbosch, a business school, basically equivalent to UCT Business School, and I did it with them. And since then, I've noticed you're absolutely right. There are very few coaches in the public sector, and we've had coaches come in from the private sector to coach us, and I've also had, it's part of what we're required to do. And that never kind of like somebody, when you faced with an issue or where you want to improve your performance, the best way to unlock that is with somebody that understands your context the best. And what better way to have someone from the public sector that's also a coach who understands the public sector. And that's why I thoroughly, in fact, if you look at my management style, I've adopted it completely, and coaching is my management style, which is a performance management, not in a negative way. It's performance managing to unlock performance.
And in terms of the people that you coach, is there a specific category? Is there a specific focus area, or do you coach most people in general?
I coach most people in general. I like I said, my area is performance. I also deal with my strength is strategic and leadership. But I deal with all areas, all levels, and it's focused on performance. Of course, it's performance coaching. The main thing that I look for is that the person has the drive to want to improve. If you don't want to improve, then I find that you're wasting, you're kind of wasting your time and your money in booking a coaching session, because you can actually tell when somebody wants this and when somebody needs it, and you can see that upliftment that they feel and that aha moment, and you can actually see from the start of the session to the end of the session that they feel lighter, and it just gives me absolute joy when I see that.
My last question before we move over to questions from the audience or for your takeout is, this is a question I like to ask all my guests. What is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
One piece of advice that I would give my younger self is don't don't be so critical of yourself. So I find your worst critic is you as an individual, and be forgiving to yourself. I think always why I say this and why it's really important. Part of my journey that's brought me to where I am now is that I had cancer 2 years ago. And I think it's
Oh, sorry.
important to bring this in. I was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer. My twins were 5 months old. And I was on leave, incapacity leave, but I realized there was a lot that I learned in that time that I was put on, I had a lot of time to reflect. And part of that, I realized what is important in life and also where you need to forgive yourself and not be so critical of yourself. And that way you also stop, beating yourself down when you make mistakes. Mistakes are okay when you learn from them.
That's great advice. And I don't think there's any questions from the audience, so it seems like you've answered all their questions in your discussion. Any last few words from you or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
Look, from my side, I think just what I'd like to tell the audience is that, everybody has potential. Everybody has potential that can be unlocked. And, don't underestimate what you're capable of, as difficult as things may seem. For the trainees that are watching this, that are going through CTA, don't think things are impossible, because they're definitely possible. It can be done, whether you're working full time or part-time. Get yourself a mentor, get yourself a coach, and because that support really helps when you're going through. And if anybody, also as part of what I do is performance coaching, and individuals can get my information in the bio.
Perfect. I think that's a great way to end. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel that it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Adila, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks always.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat. Goodbye.